So, in your opinion, Prof, how do we accurately measure the impact of AI on labor productivity, and what are the key metrics and challenges in quantifying this relationship?
Okay, there are two type of answers to that questions. One is the normative answer, and the other one is the more kind of a realistic answer. In terms of the normative, definitely AI can be potentially transformative. What do I mean by transformative? The impact can be just beyond, the partial impact. Partial can be 1, 2, 3, but it's really overall. In the economic terms, we call it economy-wide. So rather than just impacting the labor market, but it can also impact the goods market, it can impact the financial market and so forth. So that's what I meant by economy-wide. Now, transformative is something that can change the livelihood of people, basically, overall, the human being in overall. I think the closest example to that is in the 18th century of the Industrial Revolution. That was also an example of a transformative change. Now, but as we know now, yes, it was transformative, but not all are positive. There are some, undesirable impact of it and so forth. So the same thing with AI. There will be positive transformative changes as well as not so positive transformative changes. So how do we naturally we would like to have more of the positive and less of the negative. So how do we deal with that? It's all up to the human being. It's all up to the users and the initiators of the AI. And as you know, there are two types of AI. One is the basic AI, which is basically machine language type kind or text language, basically, because what you do is you just input any information, okay, and then there will be a learning process by the AI. So based on that learning process, then people can ask as many questions as they can, and they will answer based on those inputs. So that's what I call the basic AI. But then there is a generative AI. Now, generative AI is not only giving you answer to the question, but they can be creative in terms of expanding not only the answer, but also it can expand your question. So those are the two so far up to now, okay? I don't know what happened 10 years from now, but so far, those are the two types of AI. And again, in both cases, it all depends. If we really want to maximize the positive sort of outcome of it and minimize the negative, it all depends on us, on the human being, basically. So that is more or less the normative answers to that question. Now, the more realistic answer so far, unfortunately, it's so unequal. In a number of society and mostly in the developed countries, they are able to translate that AI that I was just explaining into productivity. So they can boost and elevate the productivity of labor, for example. But in many other countries, especially in developing countries, they are still not able to do that. Okay, for whatever reason. So that is the answer to the questions, what is the impact of the AI and what does it mean for the labor market productivity?
That's very insightful, Prof. Thank you so much. So it turns out that AI can be negatively or positively transformative, as you said previously.
Yes.
I'm wondering, how does utility and maximizing full output of the resources generate productivity to the labor sector in Indonesia?
Yeah, that's a very broad question. Let's think about the important aspects of AI, okay? Number one, definitely AI can do very well in most of the automation. And this is the reasons why people who are working in the area that needs repetition, book repetition, they're worried about it, because they can be replaced by AI. Okay, so this is the automation. And that leads to efficiency in terms of time, efficiency in terms of cost and so forth, right? But on the other hand, we also need to understand, if we are fully aware about what is AI, we need also to understand that no matter how advanced is AI, it's still not human. Meaning they are lacking of emotion, they are lacking of feeling, and most importantly, they are lacking of ethics. Because they are just learning from whatever inputs we give. Okay, there are two components here. One is the inputs, what we give. Any information we insert it into that will shape whatever the answer that AI can provide. But the second thing is that the algorithm. So there are two things here. One is the inputs, we put it there. And the second is how they process that inputs, right? That's the algorithms. Now, with these two components, even if the mistake is in the inputs, that is already bad. Imagine if the mistake is in both, the inputs as well as the algorithm. Let me give you an example. In fact, it's happening in many developed countries now. I don't know in developing countries, but they develop an algorithm in such that apparently it's biased. It's against particular gender, against particular race. Okay, so that is an example of risk and danger of AI, and that's why I know some companies, big companies, are so far refusing to use it. Okay, until they fix these issues of algorithm. So again, there are two types. Most people, unfortunately, is only talking about the inputs, because you can put, garbage in, garbage out, right? You can put garbage in it, and then whatever the answer the AI will give is also garbage. But people forget about the algorithm, because that input has to be processed by AI. So the processing mechanism itself can be flawed. That's it.
That's really interesting to know that, Prof. Now, I'm aware that no matter how advanced AI becomes, it is not perfect input, and that AI cannot be easily compared by humans. Relating to the next question, Prof, in your point of view, is AI primarily leading to job displacement, or is it more about augmenting human capabilities?
It can be both. That's why I said it depends on how we, the human, react and, do about it, you're too young to remember. Back in the 70s and 80s, there was a hype about globalization. In fact, many people ask me like what you are asking me now, but at that time, the theme is globalization, not AI. They're asking me, what do you think about the impact of globalization? It can be positive, it can be negative. And then they're pushing the question, how can we make it more positive rather than negative? It all depends on us. How do we do that? And look what happened now, 40, 50 years later. We saw the positive side of globalization, but at the same time, we saw also the negative side of globalization. So, it all depends on how humans react, how we, the producers as well as the users of that technology or event like globalization, react to that.
What evidence supports each perspective, Prof?
Well, the globalization evidence is here. Even among economists, in a way, I felt partly guilty, not entirely, but partly guilty, because I remember back in the 70s and 80s, most economists, myself included, was raising the flag of the importance of globalization, liberalization, and so forth. But immediately, we know that there's a lot of negative things about it. One clear example is inequality. It turns out that globalization leads to inequality. But if you look at the structure of the process of globalization, it doesn't have to lead to inequality, but it did. So evidence is it did. Look at what happened, not even in developing countries, even in the developed countries, even in the US, inequality got worse, partly because, I'm not saying the only reason, but partly because of the globalization, right? So how did that happen? Because the reaction of the human. the reaction of market, the reaction of policymakers and so forth. On paper, everything can be managed actually, if we want to manage. Now, of course, the next question, and this is the hardest question, is who manages that? That's a political economy question. I mean, who gets what and so forth. Because, theoretically, yes, it depends on who manages that. But if that who are those people who are in power with self-interest and so forth, then they can direct whatever it is, either globalization or AI, towards their own group's interest.
So based on what you said, Prof, on AI, it has both a positive and negative impact.
Yes, correct.
And also what you mentioned before, it depends on who is able to control these AI-driven
Correct.
changes. So do you think that government intervention is the most effective solution in addressing this issue? Or maybe are there other external parties that could help manage the negative and the positive impacts of AI?
Short answer is absolutely yes. Because as I said, it's still not human, meaning they can be flawed, right? And that is where we try to minimize the risk of it, okay? And that's where the role of the regulation, the government regulation. In fact, I know almost all countries, including Indonesia actually, is trying to deal with it. But before you make a regulation, you have to understand the thing first. You need to understand what is AI. So I considered why when they asked me the other day, to do this interview, I'm more than willing, because we need to understand first, what is this AI, this animal called AI, what it is. You cannot regulate things if you don't know what you regulate, right? So this is part of the learning process. But absolutely yes. Now, is it only the government? No. The whole community, the whole society, the business people have to also think about what is the best way to utilize the AI, to take advantage of the AI, and at the same time minimizing all the risks. So it's not only government, but also all parts of the community, including the business.
I see, Prof. Thank you very much for your answer.
Sure, my pleasure.
And I want to just to add on in that topic, in your opinion, Prof, since AI can lead to job displacement, what strategies could help ensure that humans maximize AI's potential while preserving the unique value of human roles? So to make sure that, let's say, our future jobs doesn't get replaced by AI, considering the AI-driven changes.
Okay.
In today.
Change is inevitable. Okay. So AI or no AI, 10 years, 20 years from now, the labor market will change. Why? Because the nature of work that human beings are requiring may be different, right? Now, AI may speed up the change, but change, it's inevitable. It will always change. It will always happen, okay? But AI can speed up that process. Now, in the process of changing from A to B, that may be very costly, including what happened in the labor market. And that's where policymakers, including regulators, can jump in and then can try to minimize any risk, any potential negative impact of it. So if you're asking what kind of job, well, just think about this. As I mentioned earlier, number one, AI can replace most of the work that involves automation. So think about any work that requires automation. So those are the most job at risk in terms of the impact of the AI, okay? But remember, I mentioned there's also generative AI. Generative AI is beyond just AI because they cannot only answer question, but they can invent, they can expand the answer, they can expand even your question. Now that is, you can call it innovation or creativity, whatever you call it. But think about what kind of job that can be also replaced by that. Okay. So just think about it, because there are all kinds of jobs and millions types of job. But I think I'm just giving you the criteria of job that will be at risk.
I see, Prof. Thank you very much
Sure.
for your answer. So additionally, I wanted to ask, are the effects of AI on labor productivity uniform across industries?
Oh, definitely no. the impact is definitely not uniform. I just mentioned to you the work that involves automation. That's definitely more effective than the work that requires less automation but more creativity. Okay, so that's one. And the second question?
The second question is, are certain sectors more or less susceptible to
Yes, definitely. It's in line with my answer earlier, basically. So some sectors are less affected, less at risk. Other sectors are more at risk. Definitely.
So considering AI's varied impacts among sectors, like you mentioned before, how should policymakers and businesses in Indonesia strategically approach AI integration to balance not only the current AI-driven changes, but also towards the integration to balance productivity of these workers?
Okay, given the potential positive impact as well as negative impact, definitely regulators and policymakers have to design certain environment that will maximize the positive side and then minimize the negative side. In fact, it's interesting you're asking this because at this moment in my class, I think some of you are taking the class. In my class, I encourage students to use AI. Why? Because I'm hoping all the positive side of AI will be beneficial to students. Take, for example, if I'm asking about, a question about very basic, like supply demand, for example, AI will definitely help you. Not only giving you, okay, this is what happened with the price, but it gives you more than just, this is what happened with the price. So that itself is adding knowledge to students. And guess what? That will save time and energy for the teachers rather than exploring and explaining all those aspects. Okay, now AI can help. Now what AI cannot, I believe, cannot answer, and this is the task of the teachers, is really to explain the rationale of it. Now think about it, the rationale of it. How can you explain rationale of any arguments or any events? Okay, it requires every aspect of the human being which machine doesn't have. This is what I mean by the power of human being is still above the AI. AI may be much better than human in terms of automation, in terms of repetition and so on. But definitely they are lack of moral, they are lack of ethics, they are lack of biases. We are all human beings survive because of our biases, right? And AI doesn't have that.
Thank you so much for your answer, Prof.
Sure.
What role can AI play in helping marginalized communities gain better access to quality of jobs, education, and health?
So this is what I'm worried very much because you're talking about, basically inequality. Because how many people have access and able to use? Because have access is one thing, able to use is another thing. How many of them can have access and able to use AI? I'm afraid it's not many. If you look at the 7 billion population in the world, I think it's only a small fraction of it so far. So that's why when we are talking about policy making, regulation and so on, not only minimizing the negative impact of AI, not only trying to maximize the benefit of it, but also inclusiveness. It should expand the use and the access of that new technology to a larger segment of the society rather than only small fractions. Okay, this is, to be honest, worries me. So one thing is about the negative impact of AI, but another thing is about inclusiveness, because it already happened with a number of existing technology, the digital technology. Look at it. It's a much simpler compared to AI. But how many people are able to have access and use the digital technology? Only small fraction.
That's very interesting to know, Prof. So, and what you mentioned earlier, should there be ethical guidelines around AI implementation in the workplace to protect human rights and societal values?
The answer is yes. It's easy. Yes, we need to have that. Yeah.
All right. So as you mentioned before regarding the access to AI and quality of education, as well as about the inclusiveness of the technology itself,
Mhm.
talking about a potential solution problem, how can we address the skills gaps that may arise due to AI adoption?
That's very hard question. Why? Because again, I'm only referring to what I know and what I'm involved currently. One of the research topic that I'm doing now is helping the MSME, micro, small, medium enterprise. And it's all over. There are some in rural areas, some in the urban area. I immediately see, even when we talk about digital technology, let alone AI, even digital technology, there's a huge gap. And it's not easy because your question is about how we deal with this. It's not easy. There are some limit that regulators and policymakers can do. And I'm even ready to say, don't go beyond that limit. Even if at that limit, they are still not able to use the digital technology, don't go beyond that. Because it will start to become, for the lack of better term, I call it mental tax. They're money tax, taxes, but this is mental tax for them. And that makes them unhappy. And we don't want that, right? What we are talking about, technology, economy, or whatever, it's for the happiness of people. If they started to feel unhappy, why? Why do we need to push it, force it, right? So yes, we need to try to educate them. We need to try to influence them so that they can take advantage of it, but only up to a certain point. Because beyond that, if still there is a degree of rejection, okay, don't go beyond that.
So since it will actually affect the workers itself, right? In this
Yes.
case. And then what kind of training and education programs are necessary to equip the workers for the future of the labor sector?
Well, this is like, the goalpost. If you play soccer, there's a goalpost, right? The goalpost is moving, right? Because technology, including AI, is moving. I just mentioned about AI and generative AI. I don't know, 5 years from now, maybe there's another AI. So it's moving. So unfortunately, the kind of training is always lagging behind the technology itself, right? So when there's a digital technology comes in, we try to train everybody to be more aware, to be more, understanding about the A to Z types of digital technology. And then they move towards AI. Now we're thinking about how to educate them and so on. But 5-10 years from now, I don't know, maybe there's a new types of AI. Okay, so that's ChatGPT-4, that it's an example of the generative AI. Now they are not only able to answer your question, they are able to give you visual output. They are able to give you audio output. I'm sure you read in social media there, people create songs now. That's audio, right? That's generative AI. Okay? And now, even for scientists, generative AI is able to create code, computer codes. Can you imagine you're inputting computer code and they generate a new computer code? So it's moving the goalpost, meaning the kind of training that we need to give is also have to keep up with this.
I see, Prof. That's very good to know. Thank you so
Good.
much. In your opinion, is it possible for partnerships between the public and private sectors to enhance the effectiveness of reskilling and upskilling programs? And what are the consequences?
Yes, yes, and yes. You have 3 questions there, and all answer is yes. Partnership between private and public is a must, actually. Now, when we talk about public, it has to cover A to Z, not just the business community, it's not just the civil society. So all kinds of, this is affecting human race, okay? Not affecting society A, society B. No, this is the entire human race. This is the reasons why at the beginning of this conversation, I used the word transformative. Because I believe AI can be transformative, changing the way the human race sort of evolve, And that is something serious in the sense of the impact can be positive, can be negative. And this is the reasons why it is important to intervene through regulation or through other means.
All right, thank you so much, Prof,
Sure.
for your answer regarding that. So, it is very insightful to know the data and also the evidence given. Now, I would like to ask about the existing resolution or intervention that exists now in Indonesia. What did you think, Prof?
Okay, I'm not the right person to ask because I'm not really, following exactly how is the use of AI in Indonesia. I'm only hearing and seeing anecdotal examples. That's why I don't think I don't think I have the authority to give you the right and good answers. If I may recommend you to ask people who are expert on AI in Indonesia.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for your answer.
So I agree with you, and it has been such a pleasure and such an honor talking to you and learning more about the productivity of AI and its effects on the labor market and welfare in general.
Yes, I agree. It was such a fruitful conversation, Prof, and we sure that we have a lot of fun discussing today here with us today.
Before we end the discussion, Prof, do you have a few wise words or message you'd like to share with our viewers? Perhaps something they can keep in mind as well as navigating the world of AI and work.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. This is maybe completely personal, but I'm really worried with the way the world is evolving now in terms of the environment and everything. Number one is, of course, the elephant in the room, and that's climate change. I'm really, really worried about that because I happen to learn about the impact of it. It's really scary. Okay. Now, on the one hand, I can talk to myself, it's okay because I'm gone by that time. By the time that impact is really operative, I'm gone. But you, the young generation, you will experience this. And that's the reasons why I'm hoping that the young generations can be more sensitive towards this kind of issue because you will be the one who go through this period with the impact of this climate change. So I think the other day I was jokingly asking, where are the Greta in Indonesia? That young lady, I think Swedish lady, We need that kind of movement, okay? Because it's a serious matter. It's nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with, anything else, but it's really seriously impacting the human race, including in Indonesia. In fact, it's even more important in Indonesia because, we are the largest archipelago. We are right in the tropical line, right? So we are considered as seriously impacted by the climate change. Now, since our topic is on AI, I'm pretty sure if there are efforts focusing on how to use AI to mitigate and to adapt with the climate change, that will be positive. That's speaking about positive impact of AI. But someone has to direct it, right? And that someone cannot be relying on just 1, 2, 3 big companies. It has to be everybody trying to direct the use of AI towards that. This is a serious matter.
Right. Once again, thank you so much, Prof, for your wise word,
Sure.
for your time, and making your way for the Economics Insight today.
Pleasure.
Thank you, and see you on the next Economics Insight.